everyone. My name is Alora. I'm going to be interviewing best-selling author Mike Manazer. Mike, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited. So I have your Lead to Win book. Let me see if you can see it. I have it with all my tabs and everything because I take all the notes. So I wanted to know why'd you write the book?
Hey, thanks, Laura. It's so neat to be with you today. I got mine too, but mine's not as tabbed as yours are because it's all up here.
Mm.
I wrote this book because I learned how to lead in the United States Navy, and I wrote 33 stories in here that are my favorites. And in fact, they're all right in the front of my memory. I can remember them. But what's most important is I added a leadership lesson and leadership resources to every story. I fully believe in the power of storytelling. And especially when you're trying to teach things to people that is more subjective than objective, like, math, you get up on the board and you do that. But leadership is such an art that it's better to tell a story. And so I think storytelling is very powerful. So I try to talk about leadership through storytelling. And I want to remind everybody too, and it's so neat to be with Alora. I'm still learning leadership, and I've been doing this for 40 years. But I do find that a lot of what we talk about is very consistent, whether you're leading military people, civilians, people who are more mature or who are younger, whether you're in a nonprofit or a charity or a community or an actual unit or a company is trying to get something done.
Yeah, and I think that's really reassuring for me too, just knowing that leadership it's an ongoing process, right? And that's kind of a concept I learned reading the book, and that's why I have all these notes. So, um,
Cool.
yeah, I was like, but like without further ado, I would like to ask you a couple of questions that I have from chapter 6. So chapter 6 has everything to do with like repetition creates
Yep.
mastery. So that's the concept. How would you explain that idea to someone who is just starting out in their career or on their leadership journey?
Well, I think it's pretty simple, Laura, the concept itself. So everybody's heard the cliche, practice, practice, practice.
Mhm.
And there is a saying that, when you go to do it for real, you fall to the level of your training. And there's even some things out there that you practice until you can't get it wrong. Not until you get it right, but until you can't get it wrong. So if you're trying to do something that's very hard or something new, if you're learning a language, if you're learning how to throw a football a long way, if you're learning how to, do a task, the first time right every time, then you practice at that task. And then the other thing about it is the first time you do it, and a lot of people get really discouraged. If it's the first time you do something, you're not going to be very good. How many people out there, learn how to drive a car, and even more than that, learn how to drive a stick shift car? And it's kind of famous, whether you're the parent out there that's sitting in the right seat in America or the left seat in somewhere else, or whether you're the sweaty student trying hard not to grind the gears or let the clutch out or stall the car. It's nerve wracking,
Yeah.
right? And so you want to keep practicing. And as a teacher, you want to be very supportive of somebody going, "Yep, I was there too." And that's kind of another thing about my book is I'm going to describe my own journey through learning this stuff too. And it's okay to fail. And so we all know we're going to be bad at something until we practice, 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 and all of a sudden you get it right, 1 out of 10 times. Then you get it right 5 out of 10 times, and then the real goal is you get it right 10 out of 10 times, and then you try next, and you go to the next thing. So that's what it is. Repetition creates mastery. Do, and I'll say that thing again. Practice until you can't get it wrong. That's mastery.
That's really, I guess that really hits core for me as someone who's young, you know? I feel like a lot of people in the beginning stages of their career are trying to think of ways to develop a routine or, some type of repetition in order to master a skill. So, for someone like me who's dealt with this personally, how could I guess what would your advice be for someone who's trying to develop a repetition skill to lead to mastery without feeling burnt out or overwhelmed?
Yeah, Laura, I want to highlight something.
Mhm.
Trying something new is not limited to somebody who's young.
Mm.
Okay, so a person like me, I've had a lot of life experience. There are people with lots of life experiences, but they might be brand new trying something new, old dog, new tricks kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so I'm glad that it hits home to you because a lot of people who are not experienced or even not life experienced, they want it to be right now.
Hmm.
And so I would say two things to answer your question. The first one is try, keep trying, keep trying. And then when you get to that point where you're so emotionally attached to the result, take a break.
Hmm.
Maybe take a break for a week. Don't try it again. I play golf, not very well. And so I
Yeah.
go to the driving range and I will get a bucket of range balls and I will work on, you know, some specific thing, how to hit a certain club. And
Mm.
I find that after a while, I just am not getting any better. And so I'll just kind of stop and I'll come back to the range sometime later. That's my best example because that's me. But again,
Hmm.
that's me learning how to do something better. If I'm
Right.
learning how to do something new, and this is the second point I want to tell people, go get a mentor or a teacher. And some people say, well, before I even try by myself, I'm going to go take lessons. And it's very, very valuable because the best teachers understand that somebody trying new, there's a burnout factor, they'll worry about whether that person's going to just stop trying because they get driven so hard. I saw this there's an old movie called The Karate Kid. It
Yep,
was
I know that movie.
redone, right? It was redone, but the very first one with Ralph Macchio as the kid, his teacher is teaching him to wax,
Hmm.
wax on, wax off. His
Yep.
teacher is teaching him to sweep his foot through the sand, and he's getting so frustrated because you're not teaching me karate, you're teaching me how to do your chores. You want me to paint your fence and paint your house. Well, his sensei is teaching his student the skills to be good at the thing he's trying to teach at. So the very best teachers understand what's underneath the skill itself they're trying to teach. So keep trying, get a teacher that understands the nuances of teaching the new skill, and then learn from that teacher and understand there are steps on the way to mastery.
So I have 2 questions for that, okay?
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to it's gonna be a two-parter. But, as far as when you're starting to think of like, okay, like I'm going to get into the repetition, I'm gonna just do it, right? And you're putting your effort into your new skill set that you want to develop. How important is it to focus on like the right aspects of repetition? And how could someone ensure that they're repeating the most effective actions for mastery?
I think I think there's two. If you're working with a teacher, the
Mhm.
best teachers are going to have you focus on those things that are the foundational skill sets. If you're teaching yourself, you want to find those basic skills that underpin everything you're trying to do.
Mhm.
Um, let's stay with the golf thing. And I don't know enough about golf to really give a great example, but let's just say that I'm working on hitting the ball well.
Mhm.
Well, I have to work on my swing.
Right.
And in order to work on my swing, one of the factors of my swing is the takeaway. When I take the club away from the ball, it's
Mhm.
very important. My tempo and how I do that. So I focus on a specific takeaway behind the ball before that swing. And I might just do, things like this. And then I might look on the internet and I might see like what gym exercises I might do to get that right so that my body is trained to do something specific. And you can see that I'm focusing on, okay, I want to hit the ball well every single time. So I know that I have to do my swing, but now I'm focused on a specific aspect of my swing to get that right. And then I work on another piece of my swing and another piece, and then I put it all together and then I hit the ball. And so I think that's the secret is defining and determining what it is you have to work on, those foundational skill sets. And again, a really good teacher can help you focus on those things instead of saying, hey, you need to keep your eye on the ball, or you need to keep your head down, or you need to, go slower, or something that doesn't really help you learn. But can, if you focus on something from that teacher's perspective, you can work on those specific things until again you get it right.
Mhm.
And then either I have seen in a thing like this where you can video yourself and you can actually see how you're doing. I've heard very powerfully that videoing somebody when they're trying to do something new can be very instructive.
Gotcha. And for a teacher, right? So for someone like me, I'm in school, university student, plenty of teachers around me. But I will say though, like it could be hard to pinpoint like, okay, I feel like this teacher could really bring out my skills. So how does someone go about finding that teacher that's gonna fit their needs and what they want to accomplish?
Well, I think like a lot of things in life with a mentor, you have to have a personal connection.
Mm,
And that person has to understand what it is you're trying to do. And so you have to be connected with your teacher. And the best teachers in our lives, just like the best mentors in our lives, we share a personal connection with them. They are committed to our success. And so the very first qualification you have to have in a good teacher for you is they are committed to your success.
mm,
And then they understand, hey, what are you trying to do? Okay, and then all right, I'm trying to do this. And then as you go through the relationship, um, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe um, you're not connecting. Um, I have failed a couple of times, and those failures are in the book. And a couple of times when I failed, I was trying to accomplish something. There was one night when we're trying to land aboard the aircraft carrier. So I was a brand new Tomcat pilot, F-14 Tomcat pilot. And I was out on deployment, my very first deployment, black night, and I can't get aboard. I know how to land on the ship. I'm new, so I'm not very good at landing on the ship, but I've qualified to land on the ship. So that idea of doing mastery until you can't get it wrong, yeah, I was still getting it wrong, like a lot. But I
yeah.
was qualified enough to go on there. But this one particular night, I could not get aboard. We called it a night in the barrel, and I went around 7 times. And usually you land after the first attempt, one, and I went around 7 times. I could not get it right.
Mm,
The landing signal officers on the ship, there's a pack of individuals that stand on the back left corner of an aircraft carrier, and they help pilots get aboard when either things aren't going well or just apparently the pilot can't get it. That particular night, even though the landing signal officers were telling me what to do and they were giving me commands and discussing with me on the radio what to do, I couldn't get it.
mm,
It didn't track. I didn't take the information I was being told by those teachers and ingest it and with the ability to get aboard like the next time.
mm.
And so, at the at the end of the thing, and that story is actually in the book. It's called A Night in the Barrel, and I do describe in there that I finally got aboard when the back seater we climbed up off the carrier off the next to last approach, and I said, hey, his name was Tim Cowden, his call sign was AWOL, and I said, hey, well, what are you thinking about back there? And he goes, ejection. And so I got aboard the next time. So there was a little bit of yeah, we need to get aboard. But I couldn't understand what my teachers that night were trying to tell me. It
Mm,
was a very impactful night for me, not because I was, trying to get aboard and, maybe having to eject in the middle of nowhere because there was nowhere else to go, but it also really drove home that teaching is about communication.
mm,
And it's about getting the right communication to your student, understanding what it is they're going through, and then drawing out, the student's understanding of the thing that's not working right, and then being able to teach that specific thing. In fact, I was a landing signal officer for another 8 years after that particular incident, and I learned a lot how to have a dialogue with my student in any particular carrier approach to be able to tell them exactly what they needed to fill in what it was they needed to do with their hands.
right. And I think something that you said really struck home for me, and that was like, "Oh, I didn't see at the time what my teachers were trying to tell me."
Mhm.
I feel like that is something a lot of people just run through, and it is until later they're like, "Oh, now I get it." In your experience, do you think repetition leads to more than just mastering the skill? Like, can it influence your mindset and approach to leadership?
Oh my gosh, what a great question.
Mm.
Absolutely. Um, yes, that, you know, learning from something when you're learning so hard, and all of a sudden it's like bling, it just, oh my gosh, I got it. I got it. And
Yeah.
and you translate in your mind what the teacher was trying to tell you, and that allows you as a teacher later on, you go, when I was learning, I didn't get this part. And
Mhm.
my teacher said something to me, and it was like it struck me. Oh, that's it. I mean, it unlocked something in my mind. And
Yeah.
that allows you to become a better teacher yourself when you're trying to teach something like that. And when you're talking to somebody about how repetition creates mastery, there's repetition of certain things that allow you to create mastery of a particular task. And sometimes when somebody has, the really hard thing to do is to unlearn a habit so you can then master something. Maybe it's something you already kind of know how to do, but you're trying to get really, really, really good at it. A skill, I don't know, me for playing golf, but maybe I've got such bad habits now. I need to unlearn a habit first. So now you have to be taught to unlearn the habit and
Right.
then go forward. But whatever that is that unlocks this thing, that's definitely that's a great thing to remember and think about as you do practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, it's this concept then of like self-reflection in a way, right? So with self-reflection and repetition, how could someone, I guess, learn to reflect on themselves without being frustrated and being like, "Oh man, like I'm just not getting it. Like I can see it in me, but I'm just not getting it down." Like what advice would you give for that kind of
Um,
mindset or you?
that is very common is to see it and go, and get frustrated. I can see it, but I can't do it. You have to have a positive mindset that you are eventually going to be able to do it. And you set a goal. So the first thing I do is I visualize myself, you know, doing that thing. Let's stay with golf for a minute. I love watching golf on TV. It's very slow. What I really watch is I watch how the players swing.
Mm,
And it's kind of like man, I wish I could do that. I'm like, unbelievable, they hit so much farther than I do. But I also watch kind of how they swing and what their bodies look like. And so that's why I said, videotaping yourself doing something. And I've used golf, and I know a lot of people don't play golf, but it's one that I can use in my head. But I picture myself looking and feeling right and feeling what it looks like. So that's first. First, you picture it. Second, positive attitude. You're going to get it. You're
yeah.
going to get it. You set your mind to it. I'm going to be good at this. When I did carrier qualifications, as we talk about in chapter 6 in the repetition, that's what I use in my book is carrier qualifications in an airplane. I have
Mhm.
never landed on a carrier before. So we practice, 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 practice. And I knew I was going to be able to do it. I just needed to listen to the landing signal officers, listen to my instructors, know what to do with my hands, and then watch when I was flying the jet, what happened when I did certain things.
Mhm.
Um, I failed my carrier qualification, the first time I tried. But what's really powerful is when I succeeded the second time, I knew exactly what I had done to fail. And
Mhm.
so I often say, your best teachers actually they want you to fail. You need to see the failure. And for yourself, you need to, you're not going to really learn something until you fail at it first. And when you fail at it, then you're going to learn what that failure looks like, or as the failure starts to become impending, and you go, okay, yep, I'm headed towards that. Okay, I need to quit doing that bad thing because that's going to make me fail. And you start to see the path to failure, and you fix it. Um, I think that people who have failed at things are better at the task than people who have never failed at them. I think the potential for somebody who has failed at something is way higher than somebody who has never failed and they're competing against the same thing.
Why is that? I guess is it just more of like the personal emotion that you go through when failing? Like why do you think that is?
I think there is that. There's also this, the human mind is unbelievably awesome. I think there's also you can see like you're on a path now to failing. Like if I do these things or don't do these things, they lead to a failure. I've seen it. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. And so you kind of it's kind of a known, it's kind of a known. I think that's the powerful part. The subjective part is resilience from failure. When you get up and dust yourself off from a failure, you're gonna go try harder. I
Yeah.
mean, that's my theme, right? I'm gonna go try hard. You don't quit and cry and go home.
Mhm.
I mean, at least winners don't. You go, oh man, okay, boy, that hurt. And then, you might even have to recover a little bit physically, and then you go, and go do something, but you keep trying and you see the things that lead to failure and you keep trying. It's like Thomas Edison and the light bulb. I don't know what the number is because the quotes everywhere. It's 1,000 or 9,000 or 10,000. But when he invented the light bulb, as the story goes, he had tried like 9,999 times and completely failed the entire time. And then he invented the light bulb. And so critical breakthroughs are always coming from a series of failures. Everything that has been really invented in humankind has come after failure. And so the best successes happen after you fail. And you just have to understand that. I'm going to keep trying here. And then you just have faith in yourself that I'm going to keep trying because I'm going to succeed. I'm going to do this. And that's what I've seen is the most powerful is that grit and determination from people that they go, yeah, I'm going to go do this. So you set that goal in your mind, that North Star that said, I'm going to go do this. And I'm going to risk everything to do this. And when you fail, you get yourself up, brush yourself off, and keep going and do it again and do it again and do it again until you can't get it wrong.
Right. I love that. I love how you made sure to mention, like, hey, success, it comes from failure. I think it's very important. People, someone like me who's young, I'm like failing and I'm like, oh my God, like I need to get it together. But you're right. So for someone who wanted to master leadership, what daily or weekly, monthly practices of repetition would you recommend for someone like me to adopt?
Well, I believe leadership is only dependent on one thing, and that's connecting with a human being with your heart. I don't believe in leading with a title. I have lots of titles in my career. I was a skipper, I was a captain, I was an admiral, I was a boss. And so the opportunity to lead with a title by authority was always there for me. But what I always felt was that the best leadership comes from when people are connected, because leadership is about influence and not bad influence, but you're trying to influence people to go the direction that you think is the way to go, right? As a leadership of a team. And again, it could be a military team, it could be a church group, it could be a social group, it could be a group of people trying to figure out the right way to put a house up. But you're connecting with everybody. And so every day, work on your relationships, work on being kind, work on learning everybody's name you run into, everybody's name. I also wrote a story in my book about learning everybody's names in my fighter squadron, and I realized that if I knew their name, that they would know that I cared about them because I cared to take the time to learn their names. And so every day I was kind of, working on my interactions with people. Now, I have bad days like everybody does. Maybe I don't feel like being so nice to people on a particularly good, a particular day or whatever. And so, you know, maybe I'm just not having a good day. But if you're the leader, you can't have a bad day because you're leading everybody. Everybody's looking to you for leadership. And so everybody you run into in your area of influence, they're looking for you to lead. And the way you lead is by connecting with them. And so I would learn somebody's name, or I'd learn something new about them, or I'd learn what kind of coffee they drank, and then I'd bring them that coffee, and they, wow, how do you don't need to do that. And you just continue to work on relationships. And when you build relationships, when you build that sort of that muscle of human relationships and interactions, you're going to find that people will want to follow you. They'll want to be close to you. They'll want to ask your opinion. They'll want to ask you questions. They'll come knock on your door and say, "Hey, you got a minute?" And if you are the person who is leading an organization, you really want that to happen. You want people to be comfortable with coming up to you. And maybe the gradient between you as a CEO and the person that's talking to you, it might be really, really steep,
Yeah.
but you want to be able to give that person time, with you because they'll work for you forever if they think you care about them, if they know you value them for their work, their input, their background, why they come to work every day, all those kind of things. So I would say the answer to the question is it's to work on those relationships every day. And then we talked about failure. Learn from ones that don't go right. You know when an interaction doesn't work right and you go, gosh, that wasn't any good. Man, I got to work on that. And maybe what you do for the failure of that particular interaction that day is you go back to the person, you say, you know what? And maybe it's just a little, time to cool off and just say, hey, I'm so sorry. That didn't go so well yesterday. I really didn't intend for that to happen. How can we make that better? Or can I make it up to you? Or here's what I'm trying to achieve, and I'm obviously new at this. How would you help me do that? That kind of thing. And I think if you do that, you don't leave those bad interactions, like lingering and festering, to where all of a sudden there's a gap between you and somebody else because you didn't never took the time, to go back and say, "Gosh, I didn't intend that to happen." Let's go back and kind of rediscuss this, or would you like to do this again, or something like that.
Yeah. And I really like that idea too of just being like, hey, like going back, checking, making sure that you did everything that you need to do in order to like build your skill set. But before we close off today, do you have like any last piece of advice for people watching, for me?
Well, you're a really good leader already, Laura, and you have a great sense of humor and you have a great positivity. And I think maybe that's what I would say is the last thing is if you're just thinking about leadership, um, leaders leaders' attitudes, the tone of their leadership, it pervades over the group. And so I always say leaders have to have an up day every day. And so there's two ways you wake up in the morning, either up or down, like one of the two, either happy or sad.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you want to make sure you wake up joyful and grateful. In fact, I heard somebody say the other day, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, go back to bed and wake up on the right side of the bed. Because because when you show up at the workplace, when you interact with people at work, they want to be around somebody who's joyful and inspirational and fired up and happy to be there. And people's I think this is really important too for those leaders out there, and even the people that are part of an organization. Your view of the organization. For me, it was the United States Navy for 36 years. And then for 7 years after that, it was the Boeing company. So big organizations that you were part of, bigger than you. But every day when you go into work, the US Navy to me was the person I interacted with, like first person I interacted with, or the person that I worked for. Every day I walked into Boeing. Boeing to me was the people I worked with. And so as a leader or a member of an organization, you got to realize that mantle, that title, the company, you're the company. You are the company. And so you want people to stay and work with you. And when you're thinking about, do I want to be here at this, US Navy or Boeing anymore? How am I feeling about working here? It's all about the people you're working with. And so, as a team member or a team leader in a large organization, how you act every day shapes the impressions of the organization. Okay. And so I would say to, you as you're a junior person, looking, to go up in a large organization, or I would say some of the leaders who are listening to us today, if they're leading people in that organization, people will want to come back to work the next day when the experience with you was positive. And I think that's the last thing I would say about leadership. When you're leading in an organization, that you must understand that organization is you. And if you're positive and passionate about the mission and you're passionate about what everybody's doing every day, if you value them for their work, then that organization is going to be better because you're doing that as a leader in the organization.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike. I feel like all this advice, good for me. for those of you watching, I hope that it's going to be good for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's session on Repetition Creates Mastery. This is from chapter 6 of the Lead to Win book. So, yes, Mike has his. I have mine all tabbed up. So,
Awesome.
awesome. Well, that's the wrap for today, guys. So, stay tuned for the next video.
Thanks, Alora.
Thank you.